The sensor array went dark at 0347 hours. 17 satellites along the outer rim of Dominion
Officer,
space.
the core is destabilizing.
All active,
Evacuate.
all
What's the
transmitting,
status? Breach in
all
Sector
reporting
7.
normal
Reroute power.
operations.
Go!
And then in the space
The readings
of
are critical.
4
We must
seconds,
act.
all
I
silent.
agree, but we need confirmation.
Not damaged,
There's no time.
not
Authorize
destroyed.
it. Do it.
Silent.
The core is destabilizing. I have to
Chief
reroute
Operator
power.
Kalen Voss had been
Almost there.
monitoring the
Just
border
hold on.
grid for 11
Yes,
years.
it's stabilizing.
He knew the difference between
The readings are
equipment
spiking.
failure
It's
and something
destabilizing.
else.
We need to reroute
Equipment
power pod to the
failure
core.
showed patterns,
Now.
warnings, degradation in signal strength before total loss. This was none of those things. This was 17 satellites spread across 40,000 kilometers of space going offline simultaneously with no prior indication of malfunction. He initiated diagnostic protocols. The system returned nothing. No error codes, no malfunction alerts. The satellites were simply gone from the network as if someone had reached out and switched them off. Kalen's hands moved across the console, pulling up backup arrays, checking secondary feeds, verifying that this wasn't some catastrophic error in the monitoring system itself. Everything checked out. The monitoring system was fine. The satellites were not. He flagged the incident for his supervisor, marked it urgent, and went back to his screens. 3 minutes later, the patrol cruiser Valencia received orders to investigate. 240 crew members. Standard border patrol configuration. 6 days from the nearest resupply station. Captain Morvan had commanded the Valencia for 8 years without incident. This would be her last deployment. The Valencia's long-range sensors picked up the contact at a distance of 2 million kilometers. Initial readings were confused. The system kept recalibrating, unable to settle on consistent data. Size estimates fluctuated. Mass calculations contradicted velocity measurements. The computer flagged the readings as corrupted and requested manual verification. Sensor Officer Lyra Strand, 22 years old and 3 years into her first deep space posting, ran the diagnostics herself. The sensors were functioning normally. The data was accurate. The object was simply impossible. Length 2.3 kilometers. Mass 14 million metric tons. Velocity 0.7 light speed. Nothing that large moved that fast. Nothing in the Dominion fleet. Nothing in any fleet the Dominion had ever encountered in 6,000 years of expansion across 14,000 star systems. Ships that size were dreadnoughts, massive, slow-moving fortresses designed to dominate entire sectors. They did not accelerate to 70% of light speed. Lyra reported the readings to Captain Morvan. Morvan looked at the numbers for a long moment, then ordered the Valencia to full alert and began transmitting standard hailing frequencies. No response. The Valencia closed to 1 million kilometers. The sensors refined their data. The object was definitely a ship. Hull configuration unlike anything in Dominion databases. Angular. Hard-edged. Every surface flat or sharply angled, as if someone had built it from pieces of broken metal and simply welded them together without concern for aesthetics. And it was old. Lyra's sensors detected layer upon layer of repair work. Hull plating that had been replaced, then damaged, then replaced again. Burn marks from weapons fire. Impact craters that had been patched over. Entire sections where the metal didn't match the surrounding structure, as if salvaged from different sources and incorporated wherever they fit. This ship had been through things, many things, over a very long time. The Valencia transmitted again. Standard greetings in 17 languages, broadcast across every frequency in the Dominion communication spectrum. The unknown ship responded, not with words, with a signal, a pattern repeating on a regular cycle. The same sequence of pulses over and over, clearly deliberate, clearly meant to be heard. The Valencia's communication analysts worked to decode it, running it through every translation algorithm they had. They were still working on it when the Valencia's sensors went dark. No explosion, no debris field, no weapon signature, no energy discharge consistent with conventional attack. The ship's systems simply ceased transmission, as if something had reached out across the distance and switched them off. No final transmission from Captain Morvan or anyone else on the bridge. The ship's emergency beacon, designed to activate automatically in the event of catastrophic damage, never triggered. The Valencia simply stopped transmitting. 240 crew members. Gone. Grand Admiral Castervale received the report at the worst possible time. He was in the middle of a formal dinner with 3 senators and the High Commander of the Western Fleet when his personal communicator buzzed against his wrist. He ignored it the first time. Protocol dictated that anything short of an active invasion could wait until morning. It buzzed a second time, then a third. Vale excused himself from the table, stepped out onto the palace balcony overlooking the capital city of Velcara, and answered the call. His night watch officer's voice was shaking. Vale had known the man for 14 years. He had never heard him shake before. The briefing room deep beneath the Imperial Palace was built to hold 1,000 people. Tonight it held 7. Vale stood at the central display and looked at the image his analysts had managed to reconstruct from the Valencia's final sensor transmission. The ship. It dominated the display, rendered in false color to highlight specific features. Every eye in the room was fixed on it. Dr. Esme Valdez, head of xenolinguistics, broke the silence first. She was 56 years old and had spent her entire adult life studying the languages and cultures of civilizations the Dominion had encountered during its expansion. She had examined texts from 43 distinct spacefaring species. She knew dead languages, living languages that existed only in fragments carved into ancient ruins. She was looking at the markings on the hull with an expression Vale had never seen on her face before. "I've found a match," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. "Partial, 3 characters." She pulled up a secondary display. An image from the deep archives. A probe report filed 312 years ago. A probe that had been sent into a satellite galaxy orbiting on the edge of the larger galactic structure the Dominion called home. The probe had detected unusual energy signatures, captured images of what appeared to be debris from some kind of conflict, and then been destroyed by a piece of fast-moving wreckage. The images had been filed, archived, and forgotten. Until now. On the screen, fragments of hull plating from that ancient debris field. And on those fragments, markings that matched 3 of the characters visible on the ship in front of them. "This is the same written language," Esme said. "Whatever was in that satellite galaxy 300 years ago, and whatever is in our space now, they came from the same place." Vale studied the ship, the scars, the repairs, the way the hull looked like it had been assembled from a dozen different sources, patched together, and sent back into action again and again. "How long has this ship been traveling?" he asked. Esme consulted with the materials analysts. They had examined the sensor data, focusing on the repair layers, the variations in the hull composition, the degradation patterns consistent with extended exposure to deep space radiation. Minimum estimate, one of them said 2 years, possibly longer. 2 years in deep space, 2 years of fighting judging by the damage, 2 years of repairs made with whatever materials were available, 2 years getting farther from wherever this ship had started. "What destroyed the Valencia?" Vale asked. No one answered. Because the Valencia hadn't been destroyed, there was no debris, no energy signature consistent with a reactor breach or weapons detonation. The ship had simply stopped transmitting, as if something had reached out and switched it off. Vale looked at the ship on the screen for a long time. Then he gave the order. Fleet Admiral Darius Kane received his orders at 0600 hours. Battle Group Kane, 40 warships, 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyer-class vessels, and 22 combat frigates. Enough firepower to pacify a rebellious star system. Enough to break the navy of any civilization that had ever challenged the Dominion. 40 ships against 1. The math seemed reasonable. Kane reviewed the sensor data on the unknown vessel with the calm assessment of a professional who had fought and won 17 major engagements over a 30-year career. Large ships had weaknesses: targeting systems, power distribution nodes, engine sections. Every ship had them. His weapons officers would find them. Battle Group Kane departed Velcara Station within 6 hours. The formation was textbook perfect. A wide net of warships designed to cut off any possible direction of escape. The heavy cruisers formed the main line. The destroyers positioned themselves to exploit any opening the cruisers created. The frigates spread out in a screening pattern, ready to intercept any attempt to break through the perimeter. They found the unknown vessel exactly where the projections said it would be, crossing the midpoint of the Vale corridor at a steady pace, not hiding, not evading, still broadcasting that same repeating signal. Kane's communication analysts had been working on the translation during the 6-day transit. They had made some progress. Not enough to produce a full translation, but enough to identify the signal as an attempt at communication. The pattern was too regular, too structured, to be anything else. Kane noted this in his tactical log. Then he ignored it. His orders were clear: stop the vessel before it reached inhabited space, by any means necessary. He arranged his 40 ships in standard intercept formation and charged his weapons. On the bridge of the UNS Adamantine Resolve, Captain Elena Voss stood at her command station and watched the Dominion fleet take up positions around her ship. She was 42 years old, 18 years in service. The last 22 months spent farther from home than any human had ever been. 2.3 million light years, an entire galaxy away from Earth, from the UNSC, from everything she had known. They had entered a spatial anomaly during what was supposed to be a routine patrol, some kind of slip space rupture, unstable, uncharted. The Resolve had been pulled through before anyone on the bridge understood what was happening. When they emerged on the other side, Navigator Silas Brennan, 24 years old, and the best mathematical mind Voss had ever worked with, had spent 6 hours running calculations before he was willing to tell her the truth. They were lost. Profoundly, impossibly lost. In a galaxy they had never seen, with no clear way back. For 22 months they had searched, mapping stellar formations, looking for anything that might indicate another anomaly, another rupture that could take them home. They had encountered debris, ruins of civilizations long dead, and once a functioning outpost belonging to a species that had tried to destroy them on sight. The Resolve had survived. Barely, but they had learned. That was the important thing. They had learned. Commander Thorne Garrett, 38 years old and 11 years serving as Voss's executive officer, stood at her right monitoring the tactical display. 40 ships, all moving into attack positions. "They're not responding to our broadcast," he said. Voss nodded. They had been broadcasting for 43 minutes. Standard first contact protocols adapted from UNSC guidelines. Identification. Statement of peaceful intent. Request for communication. 43 minutes of asking to talk. The Dominion fleet had answered by charging their weapons. "Captain," Garrett said, his voice carefully neutral. "Recommendation." Voss looked at the tactical display. 40 ships, 6 heavy cruisers, each one massing half what the Resolve did, 12 destroyers, 22 frigates, all of them moving with the coordinated precision of a well-trained fleet that had done this before. The Resolve was alone. 263 crew members, engineers, scientists, medical personnel like Dr. Kira Laurent, who had kept them alive through encounters that should have killed them. Marines, a navigator who had not slept a full night in 22 months searching for a way home. People with families, children, some of them, parents waiting on Earth, not knowing what had happened, not knowing if they were alive. She thought about the species they had encountered 8 months ago, the ones who had fired without warning, the ones who had taught the Resolve's crew what happened when you trusted too much in the goodness of strangers. "They fired first," Voss said quietly. "Noted." She turned to her weapons officer. "Weapons free, target priority, heavy cruisers first, precision strikes only. We defend ourselves. We do not escalate beyond what is necessary." The weapons officer acknowledged. Across the ship, systems that had been on standby for 43 minutes came fully online. Fleet Admiral Kane's tactical display showed the unknown vessel powering up its weapons. He had expected this. Ships under threat that always tried to fight. It rarely helped. "All ships," he transmitted. "Fire." The first salvo from 40 Dominion warships was by any measure tremendous. Plasma lances from the heavy cruisers struck the Resolve with enough energy to melt through a kilometer of solid rock. Mass driver rounds accelerated to 0.3 light speed, slammed into the hull with the kinetic force of small nuclear weapons. Graviton bombs, the Dominion's most powerful conventional weapon, detonated in a spread pattern designed to shatter hull integrity across the entire length of the target. On the Valencia Sensor Officer Lyra Strand's escape pod registered every impact. 847 confirmed weapons, hits in the first 12 seconds. The pod's sensors tracked the Resolve's shield integrity. 91%. Lyra stared at the reading. That wasn't possible. Nothing survived that kind of firepower. Nothing in the known galaxy. Ships that took that kind of concentrated fire died. Shields collapsed. Hulls breached. Reactors went critical. The Resolve's shields held at 91%. For 11 seconds there was silence. The Dominion fleet's weapons cycled, charging for a second salvo. Then the Resolve responded, not with a spread, not with the panicked firing of a ship under attack, throwing everything it had at the enemy and hoping something connected. The Resolve picked its targets. Heavy cruiser dominance flagship of the 3rd Battle Squadron. Range 400,000 kilometers. The Resolve's magnetic accelerator cannons fired. 3 rounds, each one a 3,000-ton tungsten penetrator accelerated to point 0.4 light speed. The first round hit the Dominance's forward shields and punched through. The second hit the bridge section. The third hit the main reactor, 12 seconds from intact warship to expanding debris field. Destroyer Valiant, Archer missile pods rotated into firing position. AI-guided adaptive targeting. The missiles didn't chase their target. They predicted where it would be, adjusted trajectory mid-flight, and arrived exactly when and where they needed to. Valiant's shields collapsed under the impact. The ship went dark. Frigate Resolute, point defense systems tracked it, calculated firing solutions, and engaged with precision that made Lyra's sensors recalibrate 3 times to verify what they were seeing. The Resolve was not missing at all. Lyra's pod drifted among the debris, recording everything. She had activated her recording equipment the moment the battle started because she was a sensor officer and recording things was what she did, and also because some part of her understood that this needed to be documented. Even if no one retrieved the pod, even if she died here, someone needed to know what had happened. 19 minutes and 47 seconds after the first shot, the last Dominion destroyer went dark. 40 ships, all disabled or destroyed. Casualties running into the thousands. And then the Resolve stopped firing. Not gradually, not winding down as targets became scarce. Instantly, like switching off a light. Lyra watched through her pod's small viewport as the unknown ship moved slowly through the debris field, not hunting survivors, not firing on the disabled vessels, just moving, carefully, almost gently. A port opened in the Resolve's hull. Lyra's pod receiver registered an incoming transmission, direct beam, targeted specifically at her emergency beacon's frequency. They knew she was there. A face appeared on her communicator screen. Human, forward-facing eyes and a flat face, pale brown skin, gray hair cut short, deep lines around the eyes and mouth. The kind of lines that came from years of hard decisions and harder consequences. Captain Elena Voss looked directly at the camera. Her expression was tired, careful, the expression of someone choosing their next words with great precision. She spoke. The language was unknown, but then the transmission shifted. A different tone, more mechanical. Translation software clearly assembled from fragments of Dominion language captured from the Valencia's communications and from Battlegroup Kane's own transmissions. The words came through broken, incomplete, but structured with obvious, deliberate effort. We speak. No more fight. We are far from home. 2 years lost. We want talk. We want navigation data. We want find way back. Please. Then Voss's face again. That same tired, careful expression. And then one more word, clearly considered the most important thing to convey. Please. The transmission ended. Lyra Strand sat in the dark of her escape pod, surrounded by the wreckage of 40 warships, and stared at the blank screen for a very long time. Then she did her job. She checked her recording equipment, confirmed that everything had been captured, every second of the battle, every sensor reading, every piece of footage. She packaged it all into the highest priority transmission format her beacon could produce, added her own voice record. Precise, factual. The way a sensor officer reported data. She included the face, she included the message, she included the word at the end. Then she transmitted everything back toward Valkyra, knowing it would take days to arrive, knowing she might not be alive to know if anyone received it, and hoping very hard that whoever read her report would pay attention to all of it. Not just the part about 40 destroyed warships. All of it. Lyra Strand's transmission reached Valkyra 4 days later. Grand Admiral Vale was in his office when the priority alert came through. He had not slept well since the Valencia disappeared. 4 days of waiting for information. 4 days of watching the casualty reports from Battlegroup Kane come in one devastating number after another. 8,340 personnel, dead or missing. 40 ships, gone. And now this. He opened the file. Lyra's voice came through first. Precise, professional. A sensor officer doing her job even while floating in an escape pod surrounded by debris and death. She described what she had seen, the battle, the targeting precision, the way the Resolve had stopped firing the instant the last Dominion ship went dark. Then the recording, The face on the screen, the broken translation, the message, the word at the end. Please. Vale played it 3 times. Then he forwarded it to the Imperial Senate with a priority flag that guaranteed it would be seen by every senator within the hour. He included a single line of commentary. They asked to talk for 40 minutes. We answered with plasma fire. The Senate chamber had not seen an emergency session like this in 400 years. The room was built to impress, carved from white stone quarried on a moon that no longer existed. Ceilings so high that the upper galleries sometimes vanished into mist on humid days. Seats arranged in a great arc around the central speaking floor, tiered so every senator could see every other senator, and the speaker at the center could see them all. Today, those seats held frightened people trying very hard not to show it. Senator Elena Merrick sat in her usual position, 3rd row from the floor, and watched the chamber fill. She was 63 years old, 31 years in the Senate, long enough to recognize fear in all its varied expressions. Some senators showed it as anger, loud voices demanding immediate military action, calls for overwhelming force, destroy the threat before it could threaten them further. Others showed it as denial. This was an aberration, a fluke, one lucky shot from an unknown vessel that had gotten fortunate against an unprepared battle group. It would not happen again. A few showed it as simple silence, sitting very still, very pale, contributing nothing to the debate because they had no idea what to say. Merrick had read Lyra Strand's full report, not the summary that had been distributed to the chamber. The complete file, every sensor reading, every tactical analysis, every frame of footage. Intelligence Officer Ronan Chase, 27 years old, and one of the sharpest analytical minds in the Dominion Intelligence Service, had been helping her review the data for the past 2 days. He sat beside her now, quietly compiling additional analysis that she might need during the debate. She had also read the xenolinguistics analysis that Dr. Valdez had prepared. The part about the satellite galaxy, the 300-year-old probe data, the implications of a ship that had traveled for 2 years or more through deep space, getting farther from home with every jump. She had read all of it, and she had reached a conclusion that she suspected would not be popular. Grand Admiral Vale took the speaking floor first. He presented the facts without embellishment. The Valencia's disappearance, Battle Group Kane's engagement, the sensor data, Lyra's testimony, the translated message. He showed the image of the Resolve, that scarred, battered hull, the repair layers, the mismatched plating, the markings they still could not fully translate. He answered questions for 90 minutes. The questions were predictable. How many ships can we mobilize? How quickly? What weapons do we have that could penetrate their shields? Can we track them? Can we destroy them before they reach inhabited systems? Vale answered each one honestly. Yes, we can mobilize significant force. Yes, we have weapons that might work. Yes, we can track them. Whether we can destroy them remained an open question, given that 40 ships had failed comprehensively. Senator Draven Core, representing the military committee, stood when Vale finished. Core was 48 years old and had served in the fleet before entering politics. He understood tactics. He understood force projection. And he understood that the Dominion's reputation as the dominant power in this region of space depended on responding to threats with overwhelming strength. Grand Admiral, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, you have presented us with facts. Allow me to present context. For 6,000 years, the Dominion has maintained order across 14,000 star systems. We have done this through strength, through the clear understanding that challenges to Dominion authority will be met with decisive force. He paused, letting that sink in. This vessel has destroyed 40 of our ships, killed over 8,000 of our people. And according to your own report, they did this after we attempted communication, after we gave them every opportunity to identify themselves and state their intentions peacefully. Merrick watched him carefully. Core was building to something. If we do not respond, Core continued, if we allow this vessel to simply continue on its way, what message does that send to our own citizens, to the other civilizations that exist on our borders, held in check only by the threat of our fleet? He looked around the chamber. It tells them we are weak. It tells them we can be challenged. It tells them that if they hit us hard enough, we will back down rather than fight. Scattered applause from several sections. Core had support. I propose immediate authorization for a full military response. Not 40 ships, 309, 3 complete battle groups, the largest deployment we can assemble in the time available. We find this vessel, we surround it, we give it one opportunity to surrender, and if it refuses, we destroy it so completely that there is no question about what happens when you kill Dominion personnel. More applause, louder now. Merrick waited for the noise to subside, then she requested the floor. The chamber quieted as she walked down to the central position. 63 years old, dressed in plain dark cloth, no ceremonial decorations except the small silver pin of her home district on her left shoulder. Not popular in the Senate, but respected. There was a difference. Senator Kaur has presented what he calls context, she began. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. Allow me to present additional context that I believe is relevant to this decision. She pulled up a display. The timeline of Battle Group Kane's engagement. This vessel broadcast a signal for 43 minutes before Fleet Admiral Kane ordered his ships to fire. 43 minutes. Our xenolinguistics team has now translated that signal. It was an attempt at first contact, identification of their vessel, statement that they meant no harm, request for communication. She let that hang in the air. 43 minutes of asking to talk. We ignored it. We charged our weapons. We fired first. They destroyed 40 ships, someone shouted from the upper gallery. Merrick did not look up toward the voice. Yes, she said, they did. After we fired on them first, after they spent 43 minutes trying to communicate peacefully. The sensor data is clear on this point. They did not fire until Fleet Admiral Kane's ships opened fire on them. She changed the display. Lyra's recording of the battle, the precision targeting, the systematic destruction of the Dominion fleet. And then when the battle was over, when the last of our ships was disabled, they stopped. Immediately, not gradually, not after making sure every ship was completely destroyed. They stopped the instant the threat was neutralized. She paused. That is not how conquerors fight. That is how people defending themselves fight. The chamber was quiet now. Look at this ship. She brought up the detailed analysis of the Resolve's hull, the repair layers, the variations in plating, the damage that had been fixed and refixed and fixed again. Our analysts estimate this vessel has been in deep space for a minimum of 2 years, possibly longer. The condition of the hull, the number of repair cycles visible in the sensor data, all point to a ship that has been traveling for an extended period. She turned to face the chamber directly. This is not a warship positioned at our borders as a show of strength. This is not the advanced force of an invasion fleet. This is a ship that is lost. We know this because they told Sensor Officer Strand exactly that, in broken translation assembled from fragments of our own language. They said, we are far from home. We are lost. We want to talk. We want navigation data to find our way back. Please, silence. They said, please, Merrick repeated, not surrender, not submit. Please, the word you use when you are asking for help. Senator Kaur stood. With respect, Senator Merrick, whether they are lost or not, is irrelevant. They have demonstrated the capability to destroy our ships with ease. That makes them a threat. Threats must be eliminated. And if there is a civilization behind this vessel, Merrick asked, one capable of building something that can do what we have seen, do we want them coming here with war in mind? Or do we want them to know that when one of their ships was lost and alone and asking for help, we provided it? The vote was called 30 minutes later. Senator Merrick's motion, suspend military response, attempt formal communication with the unknown vessel, offer assistance in locating navigational data that might help them find their way home. The vote failed. 41 senators for military action, 37 for communication, 9 abstentions. The authorization was immediate. 3 battle groups, 309 warships, to be assembled and deployed within 72 hours. The largest deployment of military force the Dominion had made in 2 centuries. Emperor Thalion VII, 94 years old and rarely seen outside the inner palace anymore, had made his wishes clear through carefully placed messages delivered to key senators before the session. He wanted the vessel destroyed. He wanted the threat eliminated. He had not maintained power for 30 years by accommodating things he did not understand. Fleet Admiral Orrin Hale received his orders 6 hours after the Senate vote. He was 58 years old, 36 years in service. Methodical, careful, the kind of officer who studied every engagement 3 times before forming conclusions. Commander Vera Ashton, 45 years old and his executive officer for the past 23 years, stood at his side as he reviewed the deployment orders. She knew him well enough to read the concern in his expression. Hale had read the battle group Kane reports, all of them, the tactical logs, the sensor data, Lyrastrand's testimony. He had studied the footage of the engagement frame by frame, and there was one detail that bothered him, a detail that most of the analysts seemed to have missed in their focus on the devastating effectiveness of the Resolve's weapons. The way they had stopped firing, like a switch. Ships fighting for survival did not stop like that. Ships fighting for survival kept firing until they were certain every threat was neutralized. Ships on an attack run did not stop like that either. Ships on an attack run pressed their advantage. A ship that did not want to fight stopped exactly like that. Hale kept this observation to himself. His orders were clear. Find the vessel, surround it, demand surrender. If refused, destroy it. 309 ships began moving toward the Vale corridor. On the bridge of the adamantine Resolve Navigator, Silas Brennan's console registered the first long-range contact 6 hours before the fleet arrived. He had joined the UNSC straight out of university because he was good at mathematics and navigation calculations fascinated him. He had expected to spend his career plotting courses between established colonies, optimizing fuel efficiency, maybe discovering a few new stable slip space routes if he was lucky. He had not expected to spend 22 months lost in an unknown galaxy running calculations every day, searching for any pattern that might indicate a way home. He had not slept a full night since they arrived. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw stellar maps, gravitational signatures, slip space anomalies that might or might not lead anywhere useful. Now his sensors showed contacts, multiple contacts, coming from the direction they had last encountered Dominion ships. He ran the initial characterization. Then he ran it again because the numbers could not possibly be correct. Then he called the captain. Captain Elena Voss arrived on the bridge already dressed. She had been sleeping in her uniform for 22 months, an old habit from her early days in the service, reinforced by 2 years of never knowing when the next crisis would hit. Report, she said. Silas pulled up the sensor display. Long-range contacts, bearing 093, multiple signatures. Count is still updating as they resolve out of background noise. The number on his screen climbed, 287, 294, 301, 309. It stopped there. Voss looked at the display for a long moment. Her face showed nothing. 18 years in the service had taught her not to react visibly to bad news. A captain who looked afraid made everyone else afraid. Time to intercept. 6 hours at current closure rate. Senior staff to the bridge. Now. They gathered within 5 minutes. Commander Thorne Garrett, Navigator Silas Brennan, Dr. Kira Laurent, Weapons Officer Rodriguez, Engineering Chief Martinez, Intelligence Officer Park. Voss showed them the sensor data. 309 warships, all converging on their position. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Garrett said what they were all thinking. Recommendations, Captain. Voss looked at the tactical display. 309 ships, against 1. The Resolve had survived the engagement with 40 ships, but barely. Shields had held at 89% by the end of that fight. The crew had performed brilliantly, but 309 ships was not 40 ships. The math was not in their favor. We could jump, Silas said quietly. Emergency slip space. I can plot a random vector. 50-50 odds we survive the transition, but it would get us away from here. Voss shook her head. We've been running for 22 months, looking for a way home. Running again just puts us farther away. We could fight, Rodriguez said. We have munitions for maybe one more engagement at the scale of the last one. After that, we are down to point defense and maneuvering. And after one engagement against 309 ships, we would be dead, Garrett said flatly. We won the last fight because we had superior weapons, and they underestimated us. They will not underestimate us this time. Voss walked to the viewport. Outside stars she did not recognize. Constellations that no human had ever charted. 2.3 million light-years from home. 263 people on this ship. Engineers who kept the reactors running. Scientists who had spent 2 years analyzing every anomaly they encountered, searching for a way back. Medical staff like Dr. Laurent who had treated injuries from the encounters they had survived. Marines who had fought when fighting was necessary. A navigator who had not given up despite 22 months of failure. People with families, parents, children, partners waiting on Earth, wondering what had happened, whether they were alive, whether they would ever come home. She thought about what they had learned in 22 months, what they had become. She turned back to her senior staff. "We hold position," she said. The room was very quiet. Captain Garrett began. "We hold position," Voss repeated. "We power our weapons down to minimum standby, and we broadcast. Ma'am, they are sending 309 ships to destroy us. Then we make them decide who they want to be," Voss said. "We make them choose. We sat here and asked to talk for 43 minutes last time. They fired first. We defended ourselves. Now they are coming with 7 times the force. We do not run. We do not fire first. We hold our ground and we make them look us in the eye and choose whether to talk or to shoot." She looked at each of them. "Any objections?" Silence. "Good." She turned to Silas. "Prepare a broadcast. You have the best translation algorithms. Make it clear. Make it precise. I want them to understand exactly what we are saying." Over the next hour, they crafted the message. Voss wrote it herself, working with Silas to ensure the translation would be as accurate as their limited understanding of Dominion language allowed. When it was ready, she recorded it in her own voice. "Dominion Fleet, this is UNSC Adamantine Resolve. We have detected your approach. 309 vessels. We are not running. We are not charging weapons. We are holding position. We came to this galaxy by accident. Spatial anomaly. We have been searching for a way home for 22 months. We have no territory here. We have no claim here. We have no interest in your wars. Your fleet fired on us after we spent 43 minutes asking to communicate. We defended ourselves. We did not want that fight. We do not want this fight. We have 263 crew members on this vessel. Engineers, scientists, medical personnel, Marines, people with families waiting for them, people who want to go home. We want navigation data that might help us find a slip space anomaly leading back toward our galaxy. That is all. We want to go home. We are one ship. You are 309. You can destroy us. We know this, but know this as well. We will not fire first. And if you fire first, we will defend ourselves. Again. Choose carefully what you start here today. We are waiting to talk." The message began broadcasting on every frequency they had identified from previous Dominion transmissions, repeating every 10 minutes. And the Resolve sat still in space. Weapons powered down to standby, shields at minimum, waiting. Commander Garrett stood next to Voss at the viewport and spoke quietly. "They might not listen." "I know," Voss said. "We might die here." "I know that too." Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then why Voss looked out at the stars. "Because in 22 months we became something. We did not just survive out here, Thorne. We adapted. We learned. We took damage and we repaired it. We encountered hostiles and we defended ourselves. We salvaged technology from species we met and we integrated it. We upgraded every system on this ship. We became better." She turned to face him. "We are not the same crew that fell through that anomaly. We are not the same ship. And I will not throw away 263 lives fighting a battle we do not need to fight just because we are afraid. We sit here. We tell them the truth. And we make them choose whether to be people who shoot lost explorers asking for help or people who answer when someone says please." Garrett looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. 309 Dominion warships arrived 5 hours later. They came out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. A sphere, surrounding the Resolve completely. Every weapon charged, every targeting system locked. The largest deployment of military force the Dominion had made in 200 years. And in the center of that sphere, one human ship sat perfectly still, broadcasting its message. Waiting. On the bridge of his flagship, Fleet Admiral Orrin Hale looked at the tactical display and listened to the Resolve's broadcast for the 3rd time. He thought about the detail that had bothered him from the beginning. The way they had stopped firing in the previous engagement, like a switch. He thought about his orders. Demand surrender. If refused, destroy. He thought about the message. 263 people. Families waiting. 22 months lost. Please. Behind him, his bridge crew waited for orders. Commander Ashton stood at his right, her expression carefully neutral. 309 ships, all waiting for one man to decide. Fleet Admiral Orrin Hale had commanded warships for 36 years. He had fought in 17 major engagements. He had won every one of them. He knew what victory looked like, what defeat looked like, what the moment before battle felt like when you gave the order that would send people into harm's way. This felt different. 309 ships, all waiting for his command, all charged, all locked on target. The largest concentration of military power the Dominion had deployed in 2 centuries. And in the center of that sphere of steel and firepower, one scarred vessel sat perfectly still, broadcasting, waiting. Hale's tactical officer stood ready, weapons officer ready, every station on the bridge ready. All they needed was one word from him: fire. That was all it would take, one word. 309 ships would unleash everything they had. The unknown vessel would be destroyed so thoroughly that analyzing the wreckage would take months. The threat would be eliminated. His orders would be fulfilled. He looked at the resolve on his main display, that patchwork hull, the repair layers visible even at this distance, the scars of battles fought far from home against enemies unknown. He thought about the previous engagement, 40 ships destroyed, not damaged, destroyed in less than 20 minutes by this one vessel. And then they had stopped. He pulled up the tactical log from Battle Group Kane, reviewed the timeline again. The firing had stopped at exactly 19 minutes, 47 seconds. The instant the last Dominion ship went dark. Not after, not gradually. At that exact moment, that was discipline, that was restraint, that was a crew following orders from a commander who knew exactly what she was doing. Hale had been a commander long enough to recognize it when he saw it. He activated his communication system. "Open a channel," he said. "All frequencies, translation active." His communications officer looked at him. Just for a moment, not questioning, just noting. Commander Ashton's expression shifted slightly, a question in her eyes that she did not voice. "Channel open, Admiral." Hale took a breath. He thought about his orders. He thought about the Emperor's expectations. He thought about the Senate vote that had authorized this deployment. 41 senators demanding military action. He thought about one word from Sensor Officer Strand's report. The word at the end of the message. The word that had stayed with him more than the casualty counts or the tactical analysis or the strategic implications. "Please." "This is Fleet Admiral Orrin Hale of the Imperial Dominion Fleet," he said. His voice carried across every frequency, translated into the unknown vessel's language by algorithms that were still learning. "I have received your transmission. I have read the records of your previous communication with our forces." He paused. "I am told my orders are to destroy your vessel. Let that sit. Let them understand the situation clearly. I am going to deviate from those orders in one respect. I am going to speak with you first." Another pause. "Tell me about yourself. Tell me where you are from. Tell me honestly what you are doing in this galaxy. I am listening." And the transmission delay was 7 seconds. Round trip. Light speed limitations that no technology could overcome. For 7 seconds there was silence on Hale's bridge. Every officer at their station listening, waiting to see if the unknown vessel would respond, waiting to see if this moment would end in dialogue or destruction. Then a voice came through the channel. Female. Translated by similar algorithms into Dominion language. The translation was rough and imperfect, but clear enough. And something in the cadence of it, even filtered through alien translation software, carried a quality that Hale recognized. Honesty. Plain, uncomplicated honesty. The voice of someone too tired to be anything other than direct. "My name is Captain Elena Voss," the voice said. "I command the UNSC Adamantine Resolve. We are from a galaxy you call the Milky Way. Distance approximately 2.3 million light-years from your position." A pause. When she spoke again, there was something in her voice. Not desperation, not fear, just weariness. "We entered a spatial anomaly 22 months ago, transit accident. We emerged in your galaxy. We have been searching for a way home ever since." Hale listened. His tactical officer was recording everything, every word, every inflection the translation software could capture. "We are a crew of 263 people," Voss continued. "Engineers, scientists, medical personnel. Marines, navigator who has spent 22 months running calculations searching for any slip space signature that might lead us home. She paused again, longer this time. We have not come here to harm anyone. We do not want your territory. We do not understand your politics. We have no interest in your conflicts. We want navigational data, information about spatial anomalies in this region, anything that might help us identify a slip space point that leads back toward our galaxy. And the honesty in her voice was unmistakable now, even through the translation, even across the distance in the different languages and the circumstances that had brought them to this moment. I understand you have 309 warships surrounding us, she said. I understand those ships have orders to destroy us. I am asking you personally, Admiral, to consider an alternative. Hale found himself leaning forward slightly, listening. My crew has families, Voss said. Children, some of them. Parents waiting on our homeworld, not knowing what happened to us, not knowing if we are alive. They have been waiting for 22 months. 22 months wondering if we died in whatever accident took us. 22 months of not knowing. Her voice did not change, did not become pleading, remained steady, professional. But the weight behind the words was impossible to miss. We just want to go home, Admiral. That is the beginning and the end of it. We want navigational information. And then we want to leave your galaxy and never return. We want to go home. Silence. Hale looked at the tactical display. 309 ships, one unknown vessel. The math was simple. Overwhelming force against a single target. But math was not the only calculation that mattered. He thought about his daughter, 16 years old, wanted to join the fleet when she turned 18. He thought about being gone for months at a time on deployment. The messages she sent, the way her face lit up when he came home on leave. He thought about not coming home, about her waiting, wondering, not knowing. 22 months of that. Keep the channel open, he said to his communications officer. I will respond shortly. He walked to the observation window on the side of his bridge. Outside the sphere of warships, 309 vessels maintaining perfect formation, and in the center that small scarred ship, sitting perfectly still, waiting, 263 people, 22 months from home, surrounded by enough firepower to crack a planet, not running, not fighting, asking for help. He thought about the detail that had bothered him from the beginning, the way they had stopped firing in the previous engagement, the discipline that required, the control. He thought about what it meant to sit still while 309 ships surrounded you, to power down your weapons, to broadcast a message asking for help and then simply wait. That was not the action of conquerors. That was not the action of invaders. That was the action of people who had no other choice and were making the best of terrible circumstances. He returned to his command station. This is Admiral Hale, he said into the open channel. Captain Voss, I would like to continue this conversation. There are people in my government who need to hear what you just said. If you will give me your patience, and I understand that asking for patience from someone surrounded by 309 warships is a considerable request, I will do everything in my authority to ensure you receive a fair hearing. 7-second delay. Then Voss's voice came back, still steady, still professional, but something in it had shifted, just slightly, just enough to hear if you were listening carefully. Thank you, Admiral, she said. We are not going anywhere. The transmission from the Imperial Palace arrived 4 hours later. Hale was in his ready room reviewing everything they had discussed with Captain Voss. The conversation had continued for those 4 hours, not continuously, but regularly. Voss had explained about humanity, about Earth, about the UNSC and the wars they had fought among themselves before reaching the stars, about the conflicts they had encountered in their own galaxy, about 22 months of adaptation, salvaging technology from encounters, upgrading systems, learning, becoming stronger not through conquest but through necessity. The transmission was marked Priority 1, direct from the Emperor's office. Hale opened it. The message was brief and clear. Resume original orders immediately. Destroy the vessel. Any further delay would be considered insubordination. A relief commander was being dispatched. If Hale refused to comply, he would be replaced within 24 hours. Hale read the order twice. Then he called Commander Vera Ashton. She arrived within 2 minutes. She had been his executive officer through 3 different commands. She knew him well enough to read his expression. The Emperor, she asked. He handed her the pad with the transmission. She read it. Her face showed nothing. When she looked up, her eyes asked the question she did not speak aloud. Prepare a transmission for Senator Elena Merrick's office, Hale said. Everything we have discussed with Captain Voss, the full record, every conversation, unedited, every word. Ashton was quiet for a moment. That will be viewed as circumventing the Emperor's office. Yes, Hale said, it will be. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded and went to do it. The transmission reached Senator Merrick's office 6 hours later. She was in her quarters, had not left the Senate district since the vote. She had set up a workspace in her office because she did not want to be far from communication terminals, did not want to miss anything that might change the situation. Intelligence Officer Ronan Chase was with her reviewing data and preparing analysis for any opportunity to bring the issue back to the Senate floor. When the transmission arrived, marked from Fleet Admiral Hale's command, they both stopped what they were doing. Merrick opened it. 4 hours of conversation, unedited. Complete, Voss's voice explaining about humanity, about the accident, about 22 months lost, about families waiting, about just wanting to go home. Merrick listened to all of it, then she listened to it again. When it finished, she sat very still for almost a minute. Call Censor Officer Strand, she said. I want her at the Senate chamber tomorrow morning. And draft a motion for emergency session. I am calling another vote. The Senate chamber filled quickly the next morning. Word had spread that Merrick was making another attempt. The senators came, some supportive, some opposed, many simply curious about what could possibly have changed in less than a week. Merrick had distributed Hale's transmission to every senator before the session began. Complete, unedited. She wanted them to hear Voss's voice, to understand what they were actually dealing with. Not an invasion force, not a military threat. Explorers, lost, alone, asking for help. Lyra Strand stood at the speaker's position and told the chamber what she had seen. Not the sanitized version from the military briefing. The real version, everything. The way the Resolve had broadcast for 43 minutes before Fleet Admiral Kane fired. The precision of their targeting during the battle. The way they had stopped firing the instant the last Dominion ship went dark. The face on the screen, Captain Voss. Tired, careful. The expression of someone who had been through things and simply wanted it to end. The message. Broken translation assembled with obvious effort from fragments of Dominion language. We are lost. We want talk. We want go home. Please. I was in that escape pod, Lyra said. Her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. Surrounded by the wreckage of 40 ships, 8,000 dead. I thought I was going to die there. And they came to me. They could have destroyed my pod, could have ignored it. Instead, they transmitted a message. They told me they did not want to fight. They told me they just wanted to go home. She paused. I have served in the fleet for 3 years. I have seen combat. I know what enemies look like. These are not enemies. These are people who defended themselves after we fired on them and who stopped the instant we were no longer a threat. That is not how conquerors behave. That is how people with discipline and restraint and moral clarity behave. The chamber was very quiet. Senator Merrick took the floor when Lyra finished. She did not make a long speech. She was 63 years old and had learned that the most effective thing you could do in a room full of frightened, powerful people was to be calm and clear and refuse to waste words. We have a choice, she said. We can destroy this vessel. Today, Admiral Hale's fleet is in position. If we relieve him and send a commander who will follow orders without question, it will be done within hours. The ship will be gone. 263 people who want to go home will be dead. She let that sit. And somewhere in a galaxy we cannot reach, there are people who built that ship and sent it out. Eventually, they will notice it has not returned. Eventually, they will come looking. And we will have told them by our actions what kind of people we are. She looked around the chamber. Or we can do something we have never done in 6,000 years of Dominion history. We can let a vessel leave our territory in peace. We can give them navigational data that might help them find their way home. We can tell the rest of this galaxy, and whoever is waiting in that distant galaxy, that when the Dominion encountered something powerful and unknown and alone, we chose to ask questions first. She paused. That is not weakness. That is the kind of strength worth having. The kind that does not cost you everything eventually. The vote was called 1 hour later. Senator Merrick's motion: suspend the destruction order, authorize Admiral Hale to negotiate provisional terms for the vessel's departure. The chamber was silent as the votes were tallied. 44 in favor, 39 opposed, 5 abstentions. It passed by the narrowest possible margin. But it passed. Admiral Hale received the authorization 6 hours later. He was on his bridge when the transmission came through. His crew had been maintaining readiness for 36 hours, waiting, wondering if they would be ordered to fire or to stand down. Now they had an answer. Hale opened a channel to the Resolve. "Captain Voss," he said, "I have received new authorization from my government. The destruction order has been suspended. I am authorized to negotiate terms for your departure. Tell me what you need." The relief in Voss's voice was subtle but unmistakable. "Navigation data, Admiral. Stellar cartography of this region. Any information you have on spatial anomalies. Slip space signatures. Anything that might help my navigator identify a potential route home." "Understood. We will begin data transfer immediately." The negotiation took 3 days, not because the terms were complex. They were actually quite simple. The Dominion would provide complete stellar cartography of the local galaxy cluster, analysis of every documented spatial anomaly within range, 47 separate slip space points that their long-range sensors had identified over centuries of exploration. In exchange, the Resolve's first contact with the Dominion would be recorded as peaceful. That was what Senator Merrick insisted on. How the story was told mattered. It would matter to historians, to future generations, to anyone who encountered humanity again. The story would be lost explorers, given assistance, allowed to leave in peace, not unknown threat, destroyed without question. On the third day, Hale requested a visual communication link. The bridge crews on both ships gathered around their displays. Most of the Dominion crew had never seen a human face. Most of Voss's crew had never seen anyone from the Dominion up close. The screens activated. Hale saw a human bridge, functional, practical. Everything designed for use rather than appearance. And people. So many different variations, different skin tones, different features, all human. All clearly part of the same species, but diverse in ways that the Dominion with its more homogeneous population rarely saw. And at the center, Captain Elena Voss, 42 years old, gray beginning to show in her dark hair, lines around her eyes from 22 months of strain and worry, but standing steady, composed, in control. Commander Thorne Garrett stood beside her, his expression calm but watchful. She looked at the screen, at Hale, at the Dominion bridge crew behind him, and she smiled. Not a large smile, but real. "Admiral Hale," she said, "I wanted to say thank you with a face attached so it means something more than words on a channel. I know what you risked to make this happen. I know it was not a simple choice. I know you had orders. I know what following orders and not following orders can cost in a military structure." She paused. "You did something brave. I wanted you to know that many people understand that." Hale was not accustomed to being thanked. The Dominion fleet was not a place where thanks were commonly expressed. He found himself uncertain how to respond. Finally, he settled on honesty. "You also did something braver, Captain. Sitting still while 309 ships surrounded you. Not fighting. Waiting. That is harder than fighting. Many people in my fleet would not have been capable of it." Voss was quiet for a moment. "We have had a lot of practice," she said simply. The adamantine Resolve departed the following morning. Navigator Silas Brennan had spent 72 hours analyzing the data the Dominion provided. Stellar charts, anomaly readings, gravitational signatures from 47 different slip space points. He had found it, 4 months from their current position. A spatial anomaly consistent with slip space activity. In a region the Dominion charts described as navigationally unstable, which based on what had happened to them 22 months ago, was probably exactly why they had ended up in this galaxy in the first place. "Captain, he said, his voice carrying barely controlled excitement. "I have it. 4 months travel. That is our door home." After 22 months, 4 months was nothing. The Resolve moved slowly at first, through the sphere of Dominion warships, 309 vessels holding position, creating a corridor, a path, a gesture of respect. Hale watched from his bridge as the human ship passed. That scarred, patched, battered hull. The evidence of 2 years spent far from home, fighting to survive, adapting, becoming stronger. Commander Ashton stood beside him, watching the display in silence. And now going home. The Resolve reached the edge of the formation, accelerated, faster, heading toward the outer reaches where Silas's calculations indicated the anomaly would be. Then when it was far enough from the Dominion fleet that the energy discharge would not pose a danger, it jumped. Not a standard Dominion jump, not the clean, controlled fold of established hyperlane technology. Something else. Faster, stranger, more energetic. The space around the Resolve distorted, twisted, and then there was a bright flash that the sensors recorded as a massive slip space rupture. The kind that could punch through the fabric between galaxies. And the adamantine Resolve was gone. Heading home. On Hale's bridge, the communications officer spoke quietly. Admiral, we have a response from Valkera, from the review board. They want to know how to officially record this engagement. Hale thought about it, about what had almost happened, about 309 ships prepared to destroy a vessel that was simply lost and asking for help, about the choice that had been made, the choice to listen instead of fire. Report it as a warning, he said quietly, to ourselves, about what we almost did. His crew was silent. We almost destroyed explorers asking for help, Hale continued. We almost made enemies of a species that traveled 2.3 million light years and survived. Think what they will be like if they ever come back prepared for war. Commander Ashton spoke. Sir, do you think they will come back? Hale looked at the space where the Resolve had been. I think we just showed them we can choose mercy. I hope they remember that if our fleets ever meet in their galaxy. 4 months later, the adamantine Resolve crossed back into the Milky Way. The transition was violent. Silas's calculations had been correct about the anomaly's location, less precise about the exit point. They emerged into normal space, damaged shields down but intact, and UNSC emergency beacons were everywhere. Home fleet response came within minutes. Unknown vessel transmit identification codes. Captain Elena Voss sat in her command chair, coffee in hand, Commander Thorne Garrett standing at his usual position to her right, and she smiled. This is Captain Elena Voss, UNSC, Adamantine Resolve, service number 73842, requesting permission to return to fleet. There was a pause, a long one. Then Adamantine Resolve, this is UNSC Home Fleet Actual. You are cleared for Earth approach. Your status was listed as lost with all hands 22 months ago. Welcome home, Captain. Voss's crew erupted in cheers, 263 people, going home to families, to children, to parents who had waited 22 months not knowing. Now they would know. Garrett's expression remained controlled, but his eyes showed the relief they all felt. Doctor? Laurent was openly crying on the medical deck. Silas Brennan sat at his navigation station, hands shaking, finally allowing himself to believe they had made it. Voss recorded her final log entry during the approach to Earth. Mission log, Captain Elena Voss, UNSC, Adamantine Resolve. 22 months, 14 days in uncharted galaxy. Encountered hostile contact. Defended successfully. Made first peaceful contact with Dominion Empire. Received navigation assistance. Status, returning home. Note for future explorers. When lost in unknown space, remember we survived not by fighting but by choosing when not to fight. Sometimes the bravest thing is sitting still while 309 ships surround you and trusting they will make the right choice. They did. We are coming home. In the Senate archives on Valkera, Senator Elena Merrick filed the permanent record. Everything. The battles, the votes, the conversations, the choice. Intelligence officer Ronan Chase assisted her in compiling the complete documentation, ensuring every detail was preserved for future generations. She included a note for historians. 6,000 years of Dominion history. Today we chose differently. When we encountered something powerful and unknown and alone, we asked questions first. May future generations remember what was possible when we chose understanding over fear. And somewhere between galaxies, in the vast empty dark, the story existed now in two places, two civilizations, two very different peoples who had met at the worst possible moment and somehow found a way to choose peace. The Dominion had learned that strength included mercy. Humanity had learned that asking for help, even surrounded by overwhelming force, could still work. And both had learned that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones you choose not to fight. The galaxy would never be quite the same.